There is a powerful connection between what you believe in your heart and what you speak with your mouth. Many people hope for change, pray for breakthroughs, and wait for miracles. Yet they overlook one of the most important spiritual laws, the law of faith-filled words. Life doesn't just happen by chance. Results are often the product of what has been consistently spoken, believed, and declared. If you've ever wondered why some people seem to walk in victory while others remain stuck, the difference often comes down to this. One speaks faith, and the other speaks fear. Today, you're about to discover how your words can become the bridge between where you are and where you want to be. When you learn to speak faith, you won't just hope for results. You will begin to see them. Faith is not something that remains hidden deep inside the heart without expression. True faith is always released, and the primary way it is released is through words. What you believe internally will eventually come out of your mouth, and when it does, it sets things into motion. Words are not empty sounds. They carry authority, direction, and power. When faith fills your heart, it must be given voice, because unspoken faith remains inactive. Many people say they believe, but their words tell a different story. They confess weakness while claiming strength. They speak defeat while hoping for victory, and in doing so, they neutralize the very faith they think they have. Faith and doubt cannot operate together in harmony. The moment you begin to speak doubt, you interrupt the flow of faith. But when your words align with what you believe, something begins to shift. Even if you cannot see it immediately, there is a spiritual principle at work. Believing is the foundation, but speaking is the release. Just as a seed must be planted to produce a harvest, faith must be spoken to produce results. If you never release your faith through your words, it remains like a seed still in your hand, full of potential, but producing nothing. The act of speaking is what plants that seed into the unseen realm, where it begins to grow and develop until it manifests in the natural. Your words give direction to your life. When you speak faith, you are not denying the existence of problems. You are declaring that the problem does not have the final authority. You are choosing to align yourself with a higher truth rather than a temporary condition. Even when circumstances appear overwhelming, faith-filled words rise above what is seen and declare what is believed. It is important to understand that speaking faith is not about repeating empty phrases. It comes from a place of conviction. When your heart is persuaded, your mouth will follow. And when your mouth consistently speaks in line with that conviction, you begin to establish a pattern that shapes your reality. Over time, those words build momentum, and that momentum produces visible change. Every day, you are releasing something with your words. You are either releasing faith or releasing fear, building up or tearing down, moving forward or staying stuck. There is no neutral ground. This is why it becomes essential to guard what you say. A careless word can undo what faith has been building, but a deliberate word spoken in faith can begin to turn things around. When you wake up and begin to speak faith over your life, you are setting the tone for what follows. You are declaring direction, establishing expectation, and positioning yourself for results. Even if nothing changes immediately, something is happening beneath the surface. Faith is at work, and your words are the vehicle through which it operates. Over time, as you continue to release faith through your words, you will begin to notice a shift, not just around you, but within you. Confidence grows, doubt loses its grip, and expectation rises. What once seemed impossible begins to feel attainable, not because of what you see, but because of what you have been consistently saying and believing. Your confession is more than just the words you casually speak. It is the steady expression of what you truly believe, and it quietly shapes the direction of your life. Every time you open your mouth, you are either reinforcing the reality you want or strengthening the reality you are trying to escape. Many people underestimate this, thinking their words are harmless. But over time, those repeated statements form patterns, and those patterns begin to define outcomes. When a person continually speaks defeat, limitation, and lack, They begin to create an environment where those things feel normal and expected. It becomes a cycle where negative confession feeds negative expectation, and negative expectation produces negative results. On the other hand, when someone chooses to speak faith, even when it feels unnatural at first, they begin to rewrite that pattern. Their words start to build a new expectation, one that aligns with victory, provision, healing, and progress. It is not that words alone magically change everything overnight, but they set the framework for what you allow into your life. Your confession programs your thinking, influences your decisions, and determines how you respond to challenges. If your confession is filled with doubt, you will hesitate, withdraw, and miss opportunities. If your confession is filled with faith, you will step forward, take action, and remain steady even when circumstances are uncertain. There is also a powerful connection between confession and identity. What you say about yourself repeatedly becomes the lens through which you see yourself. If you constantly declare weakness, you begin to believe you are incapable. If you continually speak strength, resilience, and purpose, you start to carry yourself differently. Your confidence is not built in a moment, it is constructed over time through consistent, faith-filled confession. The world around you may present facts, and those facts may seem overwhelming, but your confession determines whether those facts will dominate your thinking or whether you will rise above them. Speaking faith does not ignore reality. It speaks a greater reality into existence. It declares what can be rather than surrendering to what currently is. Consistency is where many people struggle. It is easy to speak positively for a moment, especially when emotions are high or motivation is strong. But true transformation happens when your confession remains steady, even when nothing appears to be changing. When you continue to speak faith in the face of delay, you are strengthening your inner foundation. You are training your mind to align with belief rather than circumstances. Your confession also has a multiplying effect. The more you speak something, the more natural it becomes, and the more you begin to believe it. That belief then influences your tone, your actions, and your expectations. Over time, what started as a deliberate choice becomes a natural response. You no longer have to force yourself to speak faith. It flows from you because it has become part of who you are. There is a discipline involved in shaping your confession. It requires awareness, intentionality, and sometimes correction. You may catch yourself speaking negatively and need to replace those words with something aligned with faith. This is not about perfection, but about direction. Each correction moves you closer to a consistent, faith-filled confession that supports the results you desire. Your reality does not shift all at once, but it does shift, and it begins with what you are willing to say on a daily basis. Words spoken in faith are like seeds planted into the soil of your life. They may not produce visible change immediately, but beneath the surface, something is taking root, something is growing, and in time that growth will become visible in ways that reflect exactly what you have been consistently declaring. Believing is where everything begins, but it is not where it is meant to stay. True belief always moves toward expression, and that expression is bold, confident speech. Many people try to reverse the order. They speak first, hoping belief will follow, but faith does not operate that way. Faith is born in the heart, and when it is truly established there, it rises naturally to the lips with conviction and authority. Before words carry power, they must carry certainty. If there is hesitation inside, it will show up in what you say. That is why it becomes essential to settle the matter within yourself first. When you take time to build your belief, to become fully persuaded, something changes internally. Doubt begins to lose its voice, and confidence begins to take its place. From that place of inner assurance, your words are no longer weak or uncertain. They are bold, steady, and unshaken. Speaking is not about volume or emotion. It is about confidence rooted in belief. A person can speak quietly and still carry great authority because their words are backed by deep conviction. On the other hand, someone can speak loudly and passionately, yet their words carry little weight if doubt is still present within them. It is not the intensity of your voice that releases faith. It is the certainty of your heart. When belief is firmly established, speaking boldly becomes a natural extension of that belief. You no longer speak as someone hoping things will change. You speak as someone who expects it. There is a difference between wishing and declaring. Wishing looks for possibilities, but declaring sets direction. When you declare something in faith, you are not asking if it might happen. You are aligning yourself with the outcome you believe in. There will be moments when bold speaking feels uncomfortable, especially when circumstances seem to contradict what you believe. Everything around you may suggest that nothing is changing, and yet faith calls you to speak as though it already has. This is where many people hold back. They wait for confirmation before they speak with confidence, but faith requires you to step beyond what is visible and stand firmly on what you have chosen to believe. As you continue to believe and speak boldly, something begins to solidify within you. Each declaration strengthens your conviction. Each word reinforces your belief. Over time, that boldness becomes part of your nature. You are no longer easily shaken by what you see or feel, because your words are anchored in something deeper than circumstances. There is also a creative force in bold speech. When you speak with conviction, you are not just expressing belief. You are reinforcing it, shaping your mindset, and influencing the direction of your actions. Your words begin to guide your steps, and your steps begin to align with what you have been declaring. What starts in belief and is released through bold speech begins to take form in your daily life. Hesitation weakens the flow of faith, but boldness strengthens it. When you hold back, you interrupt the process. But when you speak freely and confidently, you allow faith to move without restriction. That is why it is important to guard against shrinking back or becoming silent when pressure increases. Pressure is not a signal to stop speaking. It is an opportunity to speak with even greater clarity and confidence. The more you practice believing first and then speaking boldly, the more natural it becomes. You begin to recognize the difference between words that come from doubt and words that come from faith. You become quicker to reject hesitation and quicker to release confident declarations. Over time, this pattern becomes consistent, and that consistency builds a strong foundation that cannot easily be shaken by temporary conditions or passing challenges. Doubt has a subtle but powerful way of entering the mind, and if it is not dealt with, it begins to interfere with what faith has already started. Faith initiates movement, but doubt interrupts that movement. It does not always come loudly or aggressively. Often it appears as a small question, a quiet uncertainty, or a passing thought that seems harmless at first. Yet if it is entertained, it begins to grow, and over time it can weaken the very belief you have been building. When a person begins in faith, there is usually clarity and confidence. They speak with assurance, they expect results, and they move forward without hesitation. But when doubt is allowed to remain, it creates inner conflict. One part of the mind believes, while another part questions. This divided state makes it difficult for faith to operate freely, because faith thrives on consistency and agreement within. Doubt does not always cancel everything instantly, but it begins to slow the process. It creates hesitation where there once was boldness. It introduces fear where there once was confidence. It shifts focus from what is believed to what is seen, and in doing so, it weakens the foundation that faith is built upon. Instead of moving forward with expectation, a person begins to second guess, to analyze, and to pull back. What makes doubt especially challenging is that it often disguises itself as reason or logic. It tries to convince you that you are simply being realistic, that you are protecting yourself from disappointment, or that you are just acknowledging the facts. But faith does not ignore facts. It simply refuses to let them have the final authority. When doubt is allowed to dominate, it elevates those facts above belief, and that shift changes everything. There is also a connection between doubt and speech. What you allow yourself to think will eventually influence what you say. When doubt is present, it begins to slip into your words. You may start with a strong confession, but then add a statement that contradicts it. You may declare something in faith, but then follow it with uncertainty. These mixed signals disrupt the flow of faith because consistency is replaced with contradiction. To guard against doubt, there must be a conscious effort to recognize it and refuse to give it space. It is not enough to simply ignore it. It must be replaced. When a doubtful thought arises, it should be answered with a faith-filled response. This is how you maintain control over your inner environment. You do not allow doubt to take root. You challenge it immediately and reinforce what you believe instead. Consistency plays a major role in overcoming doubt. The more consistently you focus on what you believe, the less room doubt has to grow. Repetition strengthens faith and weakens uncertainty. Each time you choose to align your thoughts and words with belief rather than doubt, you are reinforcing a pattern that supports progress instead of hindering it. There will be moments when doubt tries to return, especially during times of delay or pressure. When results are not immediately visible, the mind looks for explanations, and doubt often steps in with its own suggestions. This is where discipline becomes essential. You must decide that what you believe is not dependent on what you see in the moment. You must remain anchored, refusing to let temporary conditions redefine your expectation. Faith requires agreement. Agreement in thought, agreement in word, and agreement in expectation. Doubt breaks that agreement, and when agreement is broken, the flow of faith is disrupted. That is why it is so important to remain aware of what is happening internally. You cannot allow conflicting beliefs to coexist without consequence. One will always weaken the other. As you continue to guard your mind and your words, you begin to develop a stronger resistance to doubt. It no longer has the same influence it once did. You become quicker to recognize it and quicker to respond with truth. Over time, your inner state becomes more stable and your faith becomes more consistent. This consistency allows what you have started in faith to continue moving forward without interruption, maintaining momentum even when circumstances attempt to suggest otherwise. Consistency in speech is one of the most overlooked yet most powerful forces behind manifestation. It is not a single statement of faith that brings results, but a steady flow of aligned words over time. Many people speak faith in moments of inspiration, but then drift back into negative or doubtful language when pressure increases. This inconsistency creates instability, and instability slows down what faith is trying to establish. Words are like seeds, but consistency is what determines whether those seeds take root and grow. If you plant a seed today and then dig it up tomorrow, it will never have the opportunity to develop. In the same way, when you speak faith one day and contradict it the next, you interrupt the process. Each conflicting word unsettles what has already been set in motion. But when your speech remains steady, even when nothing appears to be changing, you allow that seed to remain undisturbed, growing beneath the surface. There is a discipline required to maintain consistent speech. It means paying attention not only to what you say during intentional moments, but also to what you say casually throughout the day. It is easy to make bold declarations in a focused setting, but the true test comes in everyday conversations, in passing comments, and in your reactions to situations. These unguarded moments often reveal the real pattern of your speech. Consistency does not mean perfection, but it does require commitment. There will be times when you catch yourself speaking in a way that does not align with your belief. In those moments, the key is correction, not condemnation. You recognize it, you adjust, and you continue forward. Each correction strengthens your awareness and helps establish a new pattern that becomes more natural over time. The longer you remain consistent, the stronger the effect becomes. Repetition builds momentum. What once felt forced begins to feel normal. Your words start to flow more naturally in alignment with your belief, and your mind begins to accept those words as truth. This internal alignment creates a powerful environment where faith can operate without resistance. Consistency also builds endurance. When results are delayed, it is easy to become discouraged and change what you are saying. But consistent speech keeps you steady during those periods. It anchors your expectation and prevents you from being swayed by temporary circumstances. While others may give up or change direction, you remain fixed, continuing to speak in line with what you believe. There is also a cumulative effect to consistent speech. Each word adds to what has already been spoken. Over time, this accumulation creates a strong foundation that supports visible results. It may not be noticeable at first, but gradually things begin to shift. Opportunities appear, perspectives change, and circumstances start to align with the pattern you have been establishing through your words. Your environment is influenced by what you consistently say. The atmosphere around you begins to reflect the tone of your speech. When your words are filled with faith, they create an atmosphere of expectation, confidence, and possibility. This atmosphere not only affects you, but also influences those around you. Your consistency becomes a source of strength, not just internally, but externally as well. Remaining consistent also requires guarding against external influences. Conversations, opinions, and circumstances can all attempt to pull your speech in a different direction. If you are not careful, you can begin to echo what you hear instead of maintaining what you believe. That is why it is important to stay grounded, choosing your words deliberately rather than reacting automatically. As you continue to speak consistently, you will notice a shift in how you respond to challenges. Instead of reacting with doubt or frustration, you respond with confidence and clarity. Your words remain stable even when situations are not. This stability reinforces your belief and strengthens your position, allowing you to continue moving forward without interruption. Over time, consistency in speech becomes more than just a practice. It becomes a part of who you are. You no longer struggle to choose the right words because your thinking, your belief, and your speech are all aligned. This alignment creates a clear and uninterrupted flow where what you believe is consistently expressed and what you express consistently moves toward manifestation. Many people spend their time talking about their problems, describing them, analyzing them, repeating them, and without realizing it, they give those problems more attention, more energy, and more presence in their lives. The more a problem is discussed, the larger it begins to feel, until it dominates not only your thoughts but also your expectations. Speaking about the problem keeps your focus fixed on what is wrong, and whatever holds your focus begins to shape your reality. There is a clear difference between acknowledging a situation and continually speaking about it. Acknowledgement is simply recognizing what exists, but dwelling on it through repeated conversation gives it unnecessary authority. When you constantly describe how difficult something is, how long it has lasted, or how impossible it seems, you are reinforcing its position. Your words begin to build a framework where the problem appears unmovable. Speaking to the problem, however, shifts that dynamic completely. Instead of reinforcing its presence, you begin to challenge it. Instead of agreeing with it, you stand in opposition to it. This is where authority is exercised. You are no longer a passive observer of what is happening. You are actively addressing it. Your words move from description to direction, from observation to command. When you speak to the problem, you are declaring that it does not have the final say. You are placing your belief above the circumstance and asserting that change is not only possible but expected. This requires a shift in mindset because it may feel unnatural at first. Everything around you may suggest that the problem is fixed, permanent, or beyond control, yet you choose to speak as though it can and will change. There is a tendency to wait until things improve before speaking differently, but this approach keeps you in a reactive position. Speaking to the problem requires you to be proactive. You address it while it is still present. You speak change before change is visible. This is where faith becomes active, because it refuses to wait for evidence before taking a stand. Your words, when directed at the problem, begin to establish boundaries. You are defining what is acceptable and what is not. Instead of allowing the situation to continue unchecked, you confront it with clarity and confidence. This does not mean denying that the problem exists. It means refusing to let it remain as it is. It is also important to recognize that speaking to the problem is not a one-time action. Just as problems often persist, your response must also be consistent. Each time the situation presents itself, you respond in the same way. You do not shift back into talking about it negatively. You maintain your position, reinforcing your belief through repeated, directed speech. Over time, this approach begins to change your perspective. The problem no longer feels as overwhelming as it once did because you are no longer magnifying it with your words. Instead, you are diminishing its influence by continually challenging it. Your focus moves away from its size and toward your expectation of change. This shift also affects your emotions. When you constantly talk about a problem, it often leads to frustration, fear, or discouragement. But when you speak to it with authority, there is a sense of control and confidence that begins to rise. You are no longer at the mercy of the situation. You are engaging with it from a position of strength. There is power in directed speech. Words that are aimed at a situation carry a different weight than words that merely describe it. They are intentional, focused, and purposeful. This kind of speech aligns with belief and reinforces your expectation that what you are addressing will not remain the same. As you continue to practice speaking to the problem rather than about it, you develop a new habit. You become quicker to respond with authority and less likely to fall into the pattern of negative discussion. This habit strengthens your overall approach, allowing you to handle challenges with greater clarity and consistency. Eventually, this way of speaking becomes your natural response. Instead of reacting emotionally or repeating what is wrong, you immediately address the situation with words that reflect your belief in change. Your speech becomes a tool not just for expression, but for direction, shaping the way situations unfold through the authority and consistency with which you speak. In the end, everything comes back to a simple but powerful truth. What you believe and what you consistently speak will determine what you eventually see. Faith is not complicated, but it is intentional. It requires you to align your heart and your words, to stay steady when nothing seems to change, and to refuse every voice that tries to pull you back into doubt. You've seen how faith must be released through words, how your confession shapes your reality, how belief must come first and be followed by bold speaking, how doubt can interrupt the process, how consistency builds momentum, and how speaking directly to your challenges shifts your position from passive to powerful. Each of these works together, forming a complete pattern that leads from belief to manifestation. There will be moments when it feels like nothing is happening, when your words seem to echo without visible results, but those are the moments that matter most. That is where consistency proves itself. That is where faith grows stronger beneath the surface. You are not speaking into emptiness. You are speaking into a process that is working, even when it cannot yet be seen. You must decide that your words will no longer follow your circumstances, but your circumstances will follow your words. You must choose to speak what you believe, not what you feel, and to keep speaking it until it becomes your reality. This is not about pretending or ignoring challenges. It is about standing firm in what you know and refusing to be moved away from it. When you take hold of this and practice it daily, something begins to change, not just around you, but within you. Your confidence becomes steady, your expectation becomes clear, and your mindset becomes anchored. And as that inner change takes place, the outer results will begin to follow, reflecting the faith you have been consistently speaking into your life